Welcome to this episode of Consider It Blacklit. I am Kim, your host, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, Consider It Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope you continue to tune in each week. Today, it is my pleasure to have an up-and-coming stage producer, actor, director, playwright, Harold Hodge Jr. His latest project is Fancy Maids, and he has also brought along two of the cast members, Madeline Gray DeFries and Shanera Stroman. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
So let me just read the synopsis of the play. This is what really drew me in. The year is 1853. Four women have sacrificed everything to escape the cruelties of American slavery in the South. Determined to take agency over their own lives, they find themselves tempted by violence. Wow. So before we start talking about the play, tell our audience a little bit about yourselves, your background, and how all this came about. So we'll start with Harold.
Yeah, so I am Harold, as you said. I'm a playwright and director. I recently graduated from Pace about a year
ago.
Yeah. It's been a year.
It's where we all met.
It's where we all met,
Such
yes.
babies.
So yes, we all came out of the performing arts program there. So yeah, we've been working on Fancy Maids for about a year and a half now. Right, guys?
Yeah, wow.
I know, time really flies. It feels like we started this process like yesterday. So, but so we've been working on it for a year and a half. It was born in a playwriting class back at Pace. We workshopped it about a year ago, and now we're here.
Great. So Madeline, tell our audience about you.
So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I came up to New York City to go to Pace, and Shanera and I were in the same acting program together.
Oh, wow.
So we go way back.
So this was the acting program at Pace or before Pace? Okay.
At Pace. So it was the BFA for film acting for film, television, voiceover, and commercial. So it kind of covers all the boundaries, all of the things there. But yeah, ever since then, we've just been out auditioning, acting, doing projects. I've worked with Harold for, I think, our entire time at Pace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've done like countless projects together. It's been a long, fun journey.
Great. Shanera?
I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I got to New York, went to Pace with these lovely people here. I was fortunate enough to meet Harold through Maddie. So that's how our relationship ended up becoming what it is today. And it's just been smooth sailing ever since. I've been in a couple projects with Harold, and just to be amongst friends and like to be able to do this kind of stuff is really fun. So that's how we're getting it done.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Fancy Maids is going to be in a festival.
Yes.
Why don't you tell our audience about the festival?
Yeah, so it's the Rave Theater Festival. It's the first time that it's happening. It'll be in August. It's being put up by Ken Davenport. He's the artistic director, and his team at Davenport Theatrical Enterprises. So they're putting it up. They have 20 shows. They're all from different places around the world. I didn't know this until recently. I don't know if you knew this, but we have shows from Ireland, South Africa. We have shows from all over the world coming to this festival. There's only 20, and it'll be in August, all throughout August.
You describe yourself as a politically charged playwright.
Yes.
Why don't you explain to our audience what that means to you?
Yes. Well, in a lot of my work, I like to focus on stories of marginalized voices, people whose stories wouldn't really be told otherwise. And just in doing that, it kind of ties into politics because there's usually a reason why their voices are marginalized. There's a political reason why their stories aren't being told. So that's really why I consider myself a politically charged playwright, because I like to focus on stories that I feel need to be told, that like help change people's perspective on things, start new conversations, or that tie into conversations that we're having already now as a people or as a country.
Oh, that's awesome. So I know you said you recently graduated, but
Yes.
have you produced other plays?
Yes,
Okay.
we've done Fancy Maids before. This is
Yeah.
round 2.
No?
And we also, Maddie and I did a tour recently of another show of mine called The Boy in the Church, which also focused on racial issues in America.
An adaptation of.
Which was, yes, it was
Hunchback
a
of Notre
modernized adaptation of Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Oh.
set in Alabama in 1940.
Wow.
We love the period pieces.
We love the
And I love period
piece.
pieces too. So Harold, this play focuses on the treatment of Black women. What inspired you to write something like that?
So I was really inspired during the height of the Me Too movement. Just like the verbiage and the conversation that was happening, this idea of having to assert that your body is your own and that someone else doesn't have the right to it just really took me back to American slavery, where in a technical legal sense, someone did have the right to your body. And so I just really wanted to explore the psyche of these people, what it must be like to know that the country is saying that people have the right to own you. And so in doing that, I really started falling into like slave narratives, and the character started like popping up in my head.
What kind of research did you do to write this
I read a
play?
lot of slave narratives. I've been doing that for a while actually before, which is kind of why this idea fell to the forefront so interesting, because I've always kind of been interested in reading about that era, reading firsthand accounts, and I say this a lot in rehearsals too, that I feel like it's just really hard for a modern person to really wrap your mind around the amount of cruelty that was happening at that time, to really just understand the amount of duress, like as a people, we had to go through. So I've
Yeah, and
always
it's interesting too, because back then that was the way of life.
The way of
So,
life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, people like us woke up in the morning just expecting people to be cruel to us.
Cruel to us,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just wild to just imagine that this is your day to day, you know? So I've always been reading narratives of slaves. It's always drawn me to that. But once I started writing Fancy Maids, or decided to write it, I focused on just reading the narratives and firsthand accounts from women and what they had to go through at the time. I didn't know what a fancy maid was at first, and once I heard about that and really started diving into that aspect of slavery, I was just horrified and in like awe that was a part of the American slave trade.
Right. Why don't you tell our audience what a fancy maid is?
Maid. So a fancy maid was a Black woman who was sold with the particular purpose of being used for sex. So it was a whole form of sexual slavery within the slave system. It wasn't a secret. It wasn't like something done on the side. Like there would be big signs of saying that these women were sold for this, and it would be people they considered pretty, often mulatto, and they would sell them into sexual slavery.
Right. Makes you want to fight, right?
It does.
It sure does. Yeah.
So for Madeline, tell us a little bit about your character and how the character may be similar to who you are as a person.
Yeah. So my character's name is Ida Bell. She is a recent free woman. She's run away from slavery. And I don't want to spoil anything, but there are a lot of really difficult things she goes through to get to that point. And so she ends up at Pinky's pleasure house, and she's like, I'm here to be a maid. And she's like, well, that's not the type of work we do here. And it's kind of what Harold was talking about, kind of this idea of having to learn and realize and recognize that you're free, you own your body now. And what does that mean? And how do I move through the world owning my body? But if now that I'm a sex worker, can I say no now? What are my rights there? And that's kind of like this journey that she goes on, but still like living within these like inner demons of the past and what she got to get to this point.
Janera, what about you? Tell us about your character.
So my character is Queenie, and I laugh because she's just very, very out there, very blunt, very headstrong. She's been in the house the longest, so she kind of like knows the ropes very well and isn't the most nurturing person, but I think over time, or like as the play goes on, she definitely learns the importance of womanhood and solidarity amongst the people in the house. And I think she gains a really, really great understanding of just like, especially the gravity of the times and what's going on, just how important that is to have that within that house. So I don't know. I think we're both similar in terms of like the way we care for people. I think it took her a little bit of time, a little bit of fighting, but she got there. So I definitely think that's something that's very admirable about her. So it's been very exciting to play Queenie and very different. So totally, I would think we're very polar opposites, but yeah, it's been very fun. She's a very awesome character to play. So
Cool.
yeah.
So Harold, how do you think your play may be different from what's out there on Broadway and even off Broadway?
I feel like Fancy Maids is really different in general because it is a play set during the slave era, but it's not a plantation play. From the beginning, I knew I wanted to discuss the psyche of slavery without seeing slavery, basically. Because anytime something like that's discussed, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I just feel like going in to watch those things, it's hard to watch, you know, the brutality.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to focus on something where they were taking agency in their own lives. So Fancy Maids is not set in the South, it's set in the North with these women who've escaped. So we're hearing about slavery and we're still seeing the ramifications of it around them, yet they have taken agency of their own lives, they've escaped, they're running a business for themselves, and they're trying to survive, and they're trying to figure out how do they reconcile with the trauma they've been through. So I think that's what makes it different. It deals with slavery in a new way that we haven't seen before.
Right.
And that is a good point because I know that like 12 Years a Slave, that movie was great, but I can only watch it one time.
One
It's entirely too painful. So I do
Yeah.
respect the fact that you're trying to tell a story that shows a different aspect of it. That's awesome. Shanera, why don't you tell us how you prepare for the role?
Well, I definitely have to thank the teachers that I've had throughout the years, like in school, definitely, just for the prior knowledge I had about like this, like slavery and like what's going on during this time, you know, for men and women, you know, not just specifically us, but during this process, I think I've learned just like I've gotten a very specific glimpse of what possibly happened during that time and like just like the gravity of everything, which I still don't think I can fully grasp, especially because times are obviously have changed. But I didn't know what a fancy maid was prior to this process, so thankfully Harold was able to kind of give us that insight on what that was, which added a layer for my character specifically, who is more so comfortable with the idea of, you know, being a fancy maid and pretty complacent. So just all of that information just to kind of compile her up into Queenie, hopefully, you know, give her some justice.
Madeline, how did you prepare for your role?
So the same as Shanera, I was like, I had never heard this concept of, you know, a fancy maid. And, you know, I remember, you know, learning about slavery in like elementary, middle school, high school. And when you heard like, oh, the slaves were free, you thought like, great, they're free people. They're, you know, equality, whatever. That's what freedom means for white people, you know. And that idea throughout college and, you know, my professors of like African studies and literature, I mean, it really kind of pulled that idea away. So like, you know, going into this and going back and reading 12 Years a Slave and watching it and seeing a story that's told like that actually depicts the reality of it and all these things and going back to those things. And it's hard to watch and it's hard to like really go through, but it kind of brings you to that point of like, this is what it was like. Now it's time to do my work. Now it's time to do my character work.
So I know you knew these two in school, Harold, but did you just put them in because they were your friends, or did you have a casting process? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Maddie and I actually, it's funny because none of us were like friends before. We actually met through projects. So Maddie auditioned for one of my plays.
It was,
I know, like, we're getting old.
Like
that was like 4 years ago.
4 years
ago. And that's how we met, and we were in the production together that we've done twice now. One of them was a touring production. So Matt and I's relationship started off as director-actor, but we worked together so often. She's so talented, so I work with her often. So that's how our friendship became. And then Shannara, actually, I met her through Maddie, and at one point I was casting another play, Away, remember that?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
We were doing another play I written, and Maddie was like, oh, I have this one friend, and I had Shannara audition, and that's how I met her as well. So I met them through other plays of mine. And then in writing Fancy Maids, so I work with all of them separately on a lot of different things, and I've said to you guys a lot, I'm like, I just really want to do a play with all 4 of you in something, because you all are so talented and your energies are so different. The other 2 women, they're just so, like, everyone's so different. And I've been looking for a play for a long time to put them in. And as I'm writing Fancy Maids, it just kind of clicked. I was like, no, this is perfect.
This is the one.
Like,
Right,
these
yeah.
women are so talented. I adore working with them. And so the character, once I like saw these 4 in my mind for the play, it really just clicked. I wrote 75% of what Fancy Maids is today in a day, because I could see them as these characters, and it just made their voices and the way they talk and their characteristics just so clear.
The energy you guys give off is great. You guys are so young, and I know I'm going to see great things from you. So with that, who inspires you? Who's out there that you may like to model your career after?
I am very inspired by Lynn Nottage. She is a playwright, and she is amazing. She's just so versatile, and I think that, to me, is really inspiring when someone's able to write, but it's not always the same, you know what I mean? Like, every time you see a Lynn Nottage play, it's something completely different. So she's one of my biggest inspirations as a playwright.
Cool. Shannara?
I always go with Viola Davis.
Viola.
She's just so awesome. I love her versatility and within her as an actor. But I think there's a lot of black women that are doing some great things. I know Regina King's doing some awesome stuff. Janet Mock just got a multi-million-dollar Netflix and she's deal as a trans woman, and I'm just like, you guys are just really just doing it for us in the industry. And I think all of what they're doing, all the work that they're putting in, all the work that he's putting in, all the work that we're all putting in is just very, very inspirational. So it's a lot of things going on for Black women. I'm excited.
What about you,
our
Madeline?
time. So, I'm an actor, but one of the people that I look up to the most is the director. It's Ava DuVernay, and whether we're an actor or director, we're storytellers, and she has a way of really just fleshing out the full story for the truth and going forward and spreading the news of an event or a time that needs to be, that a lot of people don't know about. And she just does it with so much authenticity and honesty and this like really unapologetic nature. And it's just so refreshing that like the truth is out there. And that's something that like I'm just so eager to chase.
So let's just talk about the Broadway arena in general, and let's talk about audiences of people of color. I know when I first moved to New York and I started going to plays, I didn't see that many of us in the audience, even when it was plays that featured people of color. What do you think the state of Broadway is in terms of people drawing people of color to the theater?
Well, I think Broadway as a whole right now is it's been for a while. I don't want to say elitist. I feel like that's too strong.
Yeah.
But it is. That's the best way to put it. I mean, Broadway tickets aren't, easily accessible. It's not easy
And they're
to get
expensive.
to. Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And just like the first example that's coming to my mind is like, Hamilton, we love it. It's full of people of color. They cast people of color.
It's for
but
us.
the
exactly.
tickets are ridiculously expensive and hard to get to. So I noticed when I went, I was the only person of color in the audience. And I was just like, this is wild. The show is full of people of color and none of them are in the audience. So I think that's one of like the biggest hurdles that's being put up is that Broadway is very like elitist. The tickets are ridiculous. They're just not that accessible. And I feel like it's kind of keeping certain people away from the Broadway arena. And it's crazy too, just seeing how like theater like operates in other countries. Cause I've been to a few other countries for other theater festivals and whatnot. And it's just so, like theater's so accessible, it's for everyone. Like it's crazy that like there are certain countries you can go to and people are talking about theater. Like we talk about TV shows, like everyone is just conversing about this play that everyone's gone to see because, you know, tickets are so accessible. It's like going to the movies and there's always new shows popping up and theater is just like a part of the culture. And so I think it's kind of sad that like we aren't there necessarily. And I think we could be, and I think it's possible because then you do have the playwrights that are successful in bringing theater to, you know, everywhere. I mean, that's where Tyler Perry like got his start. He took his shows to all these communities that wouldn't travel otherwise, and so I think it's all just about like making it accessible for everyone.
Right. Now you mentioned that you had produced Fancy Maids before, right?
Yes.
Where was it, and what was the audience reaction to it?
The audience reaction. So Fancy Maids happened in November. And it was in New York, and it went off Broadway, and not far from here actually, 4 blocks away.
We're at Shetler Studios.
At Shetler Studios. The audience reaction was very interesting because I know we were all like the week leading up to, we were like, what is the audience going to say? Because this show, I feel like it's one of the first ones
Really
that
don't
isn't
it,
right on the nose. I feel like other things we've done in the past that deal with race or deal with like any type of issue is very straightforward. It's like, this thing is bad.
And this is what you should walk away with.
But Fancy Maids, when I wrote it, I was really just dealing with like, how do I reconcile with these feelings I have with slavery, and I don't know that. And I think that really translates into the play. And it's hard to say what the audience reaction, because everyone I talked to had a different takeaway, because we were wondering leading up to it, like, are people gonna think this is like
there's moments that are humorous. I mean, because it's saying, I mean, you know, we're finding the joy in the bad. You know, there is joy that exists.
Yeah,
even
these women
like,
have to like
the darkest times. That's when you need it the most. And that's when you need to continue. Exactly. And so it's like, is everyone gonna find this funny, or is like that just like for us? Like we're like having a great time in the rehearsal process.
These actors are so funny. So knowing that, of course, I was gonna like use that in the script. So like they, in their day to day, they have to get through somehow. So they crack jokes like the whole time. So we found it hysterical.
We were, and our banter's just like
it's so funny.
It's natural.
So like
and
and just also too, I don't want to like talk too much about the ending because I don't want to like
don't tell us the ending. We want people to come.
Exactly. But that the aspect of that I was worried about. I was just, it was very much like, I don't know how people are going to feel about this show.
And after getting to know these women this whole time, this happened, and how do we feel now? You know?
Well, let me ask you this. What is the overall message you want people to take away?
That's also hard. Because for me, because it literally changed from before we had an audience to after. Because before we had an audience, my message was very like, let's not forget these women. Let's not forget what they went through. Let's remember their story. I mean, that's still definitely what I want them to walk away with. But then before, it was just this question of, how do we heal? How do we reconcile these cruelties? But I don't know what the answer is, and I don't think you walk away from this play with an answer.
Reparations. Okay.
Truly. No, truly, because I feel it's discussed in the play, and all 4 women have very different ideas about how they should heal.
That's the thing that's, I think, the most, like, the thing that sticks out to me the most about the play, is that they're all in the same scenario. They're all, you know, they all ran away from slavery. But the way they feel about, like, these things, it's like they're not all the same woman. This, like, it doesn't represent one person that existed. It's a community, and it's a community that doesn't agree sometimes. It's a community that bands together, breaks apart, and then bands with another group, you know, and it's all just represented in like those scenes,
And that's why the audience reaction is so different, because there'll be people who hear what her character says and they'll be like,
yes.
Like what you said.
I'm like, well, she got a point.
They're like, she has a point, but I shouldn't agree with this stuff. Because I just really want to portray like people and humans. So there are people who are going to say things that are really wrong and messed up, but it's how we feel.
Like, so what's that gut feeling?
Because the question of, like, revenge just comes up a lot in this play. Like, how much of it is us trying to heal, and how much of it us trying to just return some of what we got, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So when that comes up, it's just really, it makes you feel weird taking that in, because you see these women start to do some pretty bad things, and you're just like, but
Yeah.
I'm rooting for them, and I shouldn't be, but I am.
It really transcends through up until this time, especially because I think we're all trying to figure out how, because there's still stuff going on within our Black community, you know, with like police brutality and everything. And I think all of us as a community, we all take away something different from all of that stuff. We either are complacent or we're radical, like, you know what I mean? So I think that is very, very prominent in this play within the characters. We're all just a range of emotions and a range of like trying to figure out how to heal as individuals and as a house. So I think it's just been awesome, and I hope we all get to take away the womanhood and sisterhood, like I said earlier, because I think that was, I think to me was probably the most important thing that I would hope that Queenie would take away if she was ever a real person. And you know, I think just especially with the time we're going through right now, especially with women in solidarity and like this conversation of like sticking together as equals, it's very important. It's very, you know, we see that in the play. So, you know, we hope the audience enjoys it.
I can't wait to see it. Tell us about some upcoming projects. After Fancy Maids, what do you have in line?
It's funny you should ask, because we are all also working on a film as well.
Oh.
Yeah. It's called Petty in Pink. It's a film that we're all working on that is set in a predominantly Black high school. It focuses on Tyshawn, who is in the closet. He's gay, and he's kind of floating through school unnoticed, trying not to be noticed because he doesn't want people to notice his sexuality. But then a very flamboyant teen moves to the school, and Tyshawn basically ends up protecting him from bullies. And so this boy basically offers him a deal. He's like, I can make you popular. I'm filthy rich. I can give you all these new clothes and stuff like that. You just have to protect me. So he finds himself ripped out of the closet and put on public display in front of everyone, and it just starts a huge chain of events from there.
Oh, wow. So when you're done, you have to come back on the show and tell us all about it.
We absolutely will.
Okay, so back to Fancy Maids. Where can our audience get tickets? Tell us about that.
So you can find tickets on www.therosegrewhere.com.
Therosegrewhere.com, and we're going to put it on the screen so everybody can check the guys out. Also, how can we follow you on social media?
Also at The Rose Greer on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, great.
And also the Petty and Pink one.
Petty and Pink
Petty and
Film.
Pink.
I mean, that's why we're talking about it. At Petty and Pink Film on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome, awesome. Well, everyone, that's our time for today. I encourage you to go out and see Fancy Maids. We're going to put all the information on the screen, where you can get tickets, the dates and the times. Please support these young people. You're going to see a lot of them in the future, and you're going to be like, I remember them from Consider It Blacklit. But until next time, consider yourself Blacklit. Thank you.